Hello and welcome. Today we're going to read chapter 4 of Lycos, Justice and Power in Plato, book 1 of the Republic. It's called Plato on Justice and Power, and he's particularly analysing book 1 and the section on Thrasymachus. So this is chapter 4. The function of Thrasymachus in Plato's text. While the interpretation which concluded the last chapter contains important insights, it needs to be supplemented with an analysis of the reason why the order of Plato's text is as it is. We need to know, in other words, why Thrasymachus' views about how injustice relates to strength, happiness, and ruling in the second speech should be seen as grounding his earlier claim that in all political arrangements, the determination of what counts as just in a society is tied to the advantage of the ruler. The link Thrasymachus sees between the essential injustice of the strong and the ability of rulers to rule needs explanation. How does a body of citizens remain more or less orderly within the bounds of particular policies and regulations when these represent and foster what is advantageous to rulers who, being the stronger, must necessarily be unjust? If those who are strong and rulers are necessarily unjust, must those who are weak and subject be necessarily just? Granting that the driving motive of the strong is personal aggrandizement, pleonexia, must we postulate an opposite drive which keeps the just in a weak and subjective position? Even so, how can people motivated by the anti-pleonectic motive which confines them to the role of subjects not only allow themselves to be ruled by the powerful, but actually admire the driving force and tendency which allows the latter's injustice to get them to the top? If, on Thrasymachus' view, admiration of strength is incompatible with admiration of justice, how is it, nevertheless, that some sort of justice prevails in all policies? Why is just conduct praised and unjust conduct reviled, and punished? The interpretation given in the last chapter explains how the motivation of the strong, being a motivation to justice, enables them to rule over and have control over the just. But it does not make clear how Thrasymachus thinks of the desire to be just. Does Thrasymachus believe that the just are simply those not fired by pleonexia? Or does he think that those who actually act justly do so faute de mieux, that they do not know how to estimate and pursue their own advantage without paying an exorbitant price for it? The idea in the second alternative is that those who are weak and subject, being ignorant of how to achieve their own advantage without a loss, have to rely on what the strong allow them to gain, so long, of course, as they are prepared to be the subjects of the strong. If this is Thrasymachus' view, it explains why he believes that wanting to be just cannot be a desire for anything unqualifiedly good. The essential characteristic of just actions, which Thrasymachus identifies as doing the good of another, will not define a motive to achieve the good. It will simply refer to a common characterization, a characteristic of just actions as seen from the perspective of power. In other words, Thrasymachus is suggesting that from the perspective of those who know how successfully to pursue pleonexia, just actions will appear as nothing but, quote, doing the good of another. From such a perspective, there is nothing more to behaving justly, whatever the just themselves may think about their actions. It is along these lines that we should understand the link between the second speech and Thrasymachus' early remarks about justice, as well as his refusal to allow Socrates to speak of justice as advantageous or beneficial without qualification. It was pointed out earlier, in connection with Thrasymachus' first speech, that what structures his exclusion of an account of justice is in itself an excellence, was further exclusion of the idea that the ruler legislator in framing his legislation looks to a common good independent of the dominant political ideology. The second speech is structured around yet a further exclusion, one which provides the rationale for the second exclusion, just as the second provided the rationale for the first. The reason why the ruler legislator cannot look to a common good, the good of the subjects, is because he must be powerful, the controller. As such, he must of necessity be unjust. It is only the single-minded wish to pursue his own advantage and his capacity to perceive what it is which gives him the power and control over others. And it is precisely because those who lack this capacity must latch on to the powerful if their own advantage is to be furthered that they are the weak and subject. Unlike the powerful, they have to behave justly, that is, they have to obey what the strong lay down as rules. Pardon me. Their benefit is thus necessarily dependent on what secures the advantage of the ruler. It depends on justice being defined by the ruler in the process of securing his own advantage. Thrasymachus further excludes in the long speech the idea that the good reasons people have for praising justice and condemnation of injustice have anything to do with their believing that the ends of justice are desirable in themselves. As he says, those who revile injustice do so because they fear to suffer from it, not because they are afraid to commit it. He who is capable of aggrandizement on a large scale, the perfect embodiment of this capacity being the tyrant, plunders by fraud and force alike the gods of others, sacred and holy things, private and public possessions, and never pettily, but all at once, petty instances of such acts are punished on detection, and their perpetrators reviled with such names as temple breakers, kidnappers, burglars, swindlers, and thieves. But such controversial condemnations of acts are not applied to the absolute ruler, who despoils citizens of their money and captures and enslaves their persons. He is called blessed and happy, not only by those over whom he rules, but all who hear of his complete injustice. The important point being made is that ordinary condemnations of justice are not based on an admiration of justice as excellence, as an excellence. For if they were not only unjust actions, but the motive pleonexia, which underlies petty and grand injustices like would be equally condemned, but it is not, because the motive is seen as a necessary condition for the achievement of power and control, and these ends are universally admired. People tend not to see it as evil when they are faced with the grand achievement of those single-mindedly fired by it. They only look down on it when those acting from it fail. It follows that admiration of power and control excludes an admiration of justice because, properly speaking, the motives that inspire the just must make them reject pleonexia, one of the mainsprings of the drive of power and success. It may still seem that Thrasymachus has shifted the grounds between the two speeches. Earlier, injustice meant acting in contravention of the laws of the established rule, whereas now it seemed to mean that acting out of pleonexia. Such a shift of will, such a shift will, of course, bring with it corresponding shifts in the meaning of the other key terms employed, the just, the strong, the ruler. To see that no such shifts are involved, we need to attend to certain crucial conceptual connections, which flow from Thrasymachus' last and most important exclusion. As we have just seen, this is the claim that a desire for justice cannot be a desire for excellence in the way in which the desire for injustice is such a desire. In Thrasymachus' view, it is the successful pursuit of the latter's desire, successful pleonexia, which leads to the universally admired value of power, control, and freedom. So I'm just going to leave it there. I can feel myself fading. So I will continue this next time.